Welcome, LIPSEY'S Guns fans. I am Rob Abrazino, Jason Klossner. We have a very special guest today, Bobby Tyler of Tyler Gunworks. Bobby, what's going on?
I'm just glad to be here today.
Glad to have you here, man. We've talked about this for a while. This is the first time you've been in person here on the podcast. So
I'm excited to be here and talk about one of my favorite topics that we're going to discuss today with these single action.
Triple-digit heat?
You got it. You got it.
Yeah, good.
And
because we got plenty of that.
Dripping humidity.
Oh, yeah. Dripping humidity. Well, you're coming over from Texas, right? So,
But I'm in the area where we get our average rainfall is about 13 inches a year.
Oh, wow.
So we don't have humidity.
Really?
Zero.
Where are you at?
I'm up in the Texas Panhandle.
Oh, okay.
So we either buy groceries in Clovis, New Mexico, or Hereford, Texas.
Oh, wow.
So
So it's
pretty way out there.
Pretty dry out there. Huh?
Yeah. Our kids played with rocks for toys.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to break down the 1,001 ways that we can customize single action revolvers.
It's our favorite subject around here. So.
Yeah, yes. It reminds me of the Waffle House. So don't they have like a song? I think the Waffle House has a song like 1,001 ways you can make their hash browns or something like that. So we're going to do the single action revolver version of this, and really just kind of cover. Watch the water there. We're just going to kind of cover the whole pistol. Top to bottom, left to right, front to back, and talk about all the customization we can do beyond just the very popular and famous engravings and aesthetic improvements, that you make to these guns. But there's a lot of other functional things that we can get into as well. So
and most of this is going to be based off the Ruger single action, whether it's the Black Hawk, the Super Black Hawk, Vaquero, single six. Really, all this kind of applies. Bearcat. Yeah. All of these that we're talking about really kind of applies to any of those guns. And look, from the factory, they're very usable guns. Mm-hmm. You can go out there and shoot them, but they really lend themselves well to some minor tweaks, both aesthetically, but also from a function wise. And this is where guys like Bobby really come in and do a great job of addressing all these little minor things that can make these guns shoot just a little bit better, a little bit more pleasant, and do it at a price that's not going to be outrageous. So.
Right. So what's where do you want to start? I like the Bearcat, for example. So let's kind of pick a gun and we could probably go through a few different models and maybe talk about some customizations to different models.
Well, I'll say this, probably the grips are the easiest thing to start.
Yeah.
Because coming up with what kind of grips you're going to put on a single action is always a tough decision, especially when we're coming up with a special makeup. Got some guys like wood, some like, antler.
Right.
Just all kind of different options. So, Bobby, why don't you just talk about a little bit of what some of the more popular options that you have done, and we can kind of talk about what maybe is good for heavier recoil and all that kind of stuff as well.
Okay. So when I start talking about grip options, the first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, here's our options. We've got mammoth ivory, we've got stag, we've got ram's horn, we've got buffalo horn, we've got micarta, we got ivory micarta, we've got antique micarta, we've got black micarta, but then we've got Turkish walnut, and on the super classic gun, the revolver that we're trying to look for this old school look. A lot of times the Turkish walnut is the ticket. They look good. They're actually the most time consuming to build out of all of them.
Really?
Yeah, they really are.
When you told me that earlier, that kind of surprised me, actually.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. No, they're the most time consuming. I can build 2 pair of ivories at the same rate we build 1 pair of the Turkish walnut.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what about from a strength standpoint? Sometimes you hear, I know like in big, heavy recoiling rifles, generally you look for more straight grain type of gun, especially through the wrist and everything like that. Do you find that there's any issues with highly figured Turkish walnut for heavy recoiling guns?
We're not seeing a lot of problems because what we've started doing is going in and stabilizing all of them. That way I'll eliminate that part from the equation.
What does that mean?
So what we're doing is we're submerging the raw piece of wood down in a vacuum suction machine with a epoxy resin running through it.
Wow.
And we suck the moisture out, and then we pump the resin in it. And when we sand it out and seal it, you don't see any different look in the wood, but you have the strength. And if you rub it and you feel it, you'll feel it's just baby smooth.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I know some of the pictures, on your website of those guns with those grips on there, they look stunning. That Turkish walnut has a great color. It's kind of a caramel, kind of with some black streaks in it and stuff. And
you never know what you're going to get.
It just looks fun.
Yeah.
I really like the looks of it. And, and I find, too, on a single-action revolver, especially the heavy kickers, I like something that's smooth. I don't like a lot of texture because I want that gun to be able to roll a little bit in my hand and not just abrade your hand super hard.
Yeah, it could rough you up a little bit,
too.
especially
like checkered grips on a 480 or a heavy 44 Magnum is no fun. But I will say this, when it comes to 44 Specials, 357s, mild loaded 45 Colts, I think Stag is probably my favorite grip material.
Yeah.
This 44 Special that I've got, this is my gun here that Bobby did for me. It's got Stag. And I tell you what, it gives just enough texture to where everything locks in. If it's raining, if it's wet, you got a good handle on it. But it doesn't really tear your hand up either if you're shooting heavy loads in it. So
right.
I know that you've done a lot with American Elk Stag, but I know sandbar has always been kind of a big deal too. But
I just can't get sandbar anymore.
Yeah, I guess they don't let you import it anymore.
Yeah, and I've tried to bring it in from Australia. I mean, I've tried, pretty good measures to get it, and it's just not feasible right now.
So we've had a lot of luck with a lot of our exclusive guns, our premier grade Colts and Walthers and stuff like that with American Elk. And I know you've done a lot with that lately. How's that been holding up for grip material?
Yeah, it holds up phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if there's a problem or a mistake or a break, it happens in production. Once you get them on, and I've ran some up on some of the 480s, and I've never had a pair break under recoil.
They're strength tested by then, basically.
They're really good, and so a couple of things. It's an iconic thing to have Stag grips on your revolver. The other thing I like about it is it's a American byproduct that drops on the ground every year. That there's people who make a living by harvesting them,
right?
And it just kind of keeps America working,
right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of value in that for me. But so you're in the woods and you've got a mildish type caliber. I mean, and we can take and remove more of the bark to make it more mild than a heavy hitter. But you're in the woods, your hands are damp, maybe you're a little sweaty. You got to reach and grab it. It's not going to move because that bark, that's what it's for. That's why people used certain products back in the 1800s. There was no cosmetic back then.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
everything was functional.
It was functional.
I fully believe that with
Well, to this day,
cosmetic was maybe you got lucky and something looked good, but it had to be functional first.
Right. I mean, to this day, a Stag handled hunting knife is still really the most ideal because it's you have texture, and it just by chance it happens to look really good. So, Stag is definitely one of my favorites. When it comes to the heavy kicking stuff, I've really come to love Micarta though. Because, I mean, Micarta is absolutely bomb-proof. You're not going to break it. I love that a lot of the stuff that you've been putting out lately has some nice grain to it. My little short barrel 480 Bisley, he put a set of antique ivory Micarta on it, and it looks sharp on that stainless gun. So, and I tell you another thing that Bobby does with his grips is he puts a little palm swell in the middle of those guns. And I tell you what, my 480, I always felt like my short barrel 480 was not that bad to shoot, even with the factory grips. Those grips that he built with that slight palm swell in there turn that gun into, now it feels like a heavy 45 Colt. It is not bad at all. It really, really was the perfect combination of locking the grip in, but letting the gun move enough to absorb some of that energy when it's coming back. Superb shape on those grips.
What that does for you is that palm swell fits that area in your hand that's unsupported, and instead of having movement or extra recoil, it moves with your hand. And so it does minimize very so slightly recoil, but more than anything, it makes you do it comfortable. And if you do anything more comfortably, you do it better.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So big fan of the Micarta, big fan of the Stags. Obviously, the wood's beautiful. Yeah. And really, honestly, these days, there's all kind of options for grips out there.
Well, and for the smaller caliber stuff, like I mentioned, I love the Bearcat and, guns like that. You really can do whatever you want because there's no, function doesn't come into play so much.
Correct.
as just, cool looking.
Right. If you really want to do Bearcat right, mammoth ivories.
Hard to beat.
That's hard to beat.
Yeah.
And just for you people out there listening who are probably going, mammoth ivory, what are you talking about? Yes, there are mammoth molars and tusk out there that are being harvested.
I
out in the Siberia or wherever else.
I learned this last year. I think we were talking about this, and it might have been one of your guns. I don't know what gun it was on. What
probably that Browning High Power I showed you.
Maybe that was it. Yeah,
he stocked. Yeah.
And I'm like a mammoth, like prehistoric.
Like a woolly mammoth.
Yeah, I'm like, there's no way. I mean, there's no way. And
Bobby, tell us the background on it, man.
Yeah, and they're just taking bits and pieces, and we're making whatever out of it. I was really surprised by that.
So I was at a gun show in Tulsa several years ago, and this guy came up and he said, I just can't get over the fact that you guys keep killing these for their mammoth, for their ivory.
Killing the mammoth?
Yeah, and I said, well, it's just part of life. I said, but the good news is back then when we killed them, we ate them.
Yeah.
The people at the time when it was, that point in time in life, it was a meat source.
You could feed a village.
So luckily, we're digging them up, and in Alaska, some of it's coming out of Alaska, but the biggest part of my mammoth comes out of Russia.
Wow!
And we bring it in pretty large quantities.
What is that? What's a large quantity?
Oh, if you get 1,000 pounds of,
is it the tusk? Is it like a tusk?
So when you dig it up, they're not big, pretty tusk like what you would think of an elephant anymore.
Right.
And so they're broken pieces. But the broken pieces are still huge. They might be as big as a football.
Yeah.
And
so it's like almost probably like rock, it looks like, or something along that line.
It'll be like a deal where you'll see layers, you'll see like outside shell.
Wow.
And so that's where a lot of the epoxy stabilizing method started that we're using in wood now. So we'll go in and epoxy stabilize that mammoth. That way when we're working it, you have no problems.
Is the quality, now we're getting into biology, a biology class here. Is the quality of the tusk the same through and through? So, you've got a tusk, 9 inches round, and you cut through it like a log.
Right.
Is the quality on the inside as good as the outside, or vice versa? Or
so what you'll find on tusk is the part that's the closest to the animal is hollow, going up into the animal.
Okay.
But what my personal, and I haven't really discussed this with anybody, but when they dig these up and they've been underground all this time, that hollow is pretty well gone. Really, all that's left is the solid.
Okay.
So like back when we used to deal with elephant,
yeah,
you would have a big hollow.
Right.
And they were old because...
And it would deteriorate.
Yeah. But these mammoth, by the time they dig them up, maybe they hit them with an excavator and they find it, and then they really you're just getting solid. And so you either have a good tusk or a bad tusk.
Yeah.
But you don't have a tusk that's good, and then you go to a certain point and it turns bad.
I think the thing that really kind of trips me out about the whole thing is mammoth are so like old and cool and prehistoric. Like I would think that the tusk would be invaluable. Like no one could even afford them, but apparently there's plenty to go around.
There's a bunch of it.
Yeah. I mean, I really.
If you really want something, if you have a real special project that like an engraved gun, or something that you want to have as a really nice gift, mammoth ivory is a great option for, because you can't do elephant ivory anymore.
Right.
It's got to be pre-banned,
Sure.
which is a whole other story. But so really, it's a great alternative to have that look and feel, and in a lot of ways, have something that has a lot different tones of color. So the way I understand it is, depending on where the mammoth died and the sediments that they laid in, they can determine the color of the tusk.
Yeah.
And so you get some nice blues and greens and reddish hues. It's some really cool stuff that really sets a gun off that's completely off the charts.
Well, look at this whole 5-minute conversation. What a talking point just to have that and to pull that out of your safe.
Oh, look,
with your friends, and to just start this conversation, because I guarantee 8 out of 10 people don't know like that.
If you want a showstopper topic in your gun collection, put some mammoth on something.
Yeah.
Because most people don't believe it's even real.
Right.
And then when you give them the story of it, they're like, wow, that's just really, really cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I really like it a lot.
And the good news is, once you put it on them, it's not like you're losing it. It's not like you're going to a barbecue, you're paying for the barbecue, and everybody's going to eat it and go home.
Right.
The value stays with
that
mammoth ivory, and it's going to do nothing but go up.
Well, they're not making more.
No, that's the truth.
That's for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So I'd say, Rob, since we're kind of talking about the grip and everything, there is another way to customize these guns, and this is really kind of more of a newer development, and it's the grip frames. Obviously Ruger makes, Bisley grip frames, standard, flat top XR3 type grip frames in aluminum or steel. But there's a company that called RW Grip Frames that Bobby and I deal with, and Ronnie Wells over there has gone into making all sorts of different size and styles of grip frames, from bird's head to modified Bisleys, all kind of things. I mean, really anything you can dream of, he can pretty much make it. And he does them in aluminum and in brass. So he can take an all-steel Bisley gun like this and knock about 8 ounces off of it by doing it in aluminum. Or he can do it in a brass for a real striking look as well. And I know, Bobby, you've fitted a lot of those grip frames in the last few years and had a lot of good success with that. I know you just did your lightweight Vaquero package with one of those. And I tell you what, it's a great option for somebody who wants to change up the feel, especially hand size. Everybody's, no two hands are the same, and everybody's got a different feel or the way they grip things, and being able to change that grip frame is a huge benefit now. So tell us a little bit about what your experiences with those grip frames have done and some of the options that are out there.
So like you said, Ronnie, he's a guy that's bringing so much to the table right now.
Yep.
As we go on, we're going to mention him again. And one of the things I like about these aluminum grip frames is he's building them out of a certain grade of aluminum, and it's so hard, and it's so awesome for the end product. But they're quite a bit to fit. I mean, they're hard. You think, well, it's aluminum.
Yeah,
they're pretty hard, and so
harder to mold and manipulate than
the material's pretty hard.
Yeah.
And so when we get them, he's got them CNC'd out, and then we have to fit them up to the frame of the receiver. And then we have to fit the grips, and then all that has to be blended as a 1-to-1 fit. So the thing about Ronnie is he's got huge, big old hands. I mean, you grab a hold to that old boy's hand and you shake his hand, you feel like you're sitting there holding your daddy's hand.
Right.
I mean, he's got huge hands, and most people, one grip frame doesn't fit everybody's hand.
Yeah.
And so their fingers will hang off. They can't get all the way around it. Mm-hmm. They can't get high enough. And so he has gone in and developed all these different grip frames, all these different programs, written programs to build all of them. Gone in, designed them, developed them. And what that does is it allows you to fire the revolver at the most comfort again. Mm-hmm. We're right back to comfort. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about the grips, the grip frame. If you can do it more comfortably, it'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the brass ones, his brass, you'd think, well, I don't know if I want to put a chunk of aluminum or a chunk of brass on the back of one of these 480s. They are hard and durable.
Yeah.
And they're shaped right.
Yep.
So it's not just the shape of the grip. A lot of people want to think, well, it's just the grip. Well, you get to talking to Ronnie, and you'll start talking about the angles which it comes out. It comes out at a certain degree angle.
Right.
And it turns here. And as you're holding the revolver, it matters how it recoils back.
Mm-hmm.
The end recoil matters all the way from the start to the end. And so there's so much that goes into it that it's hard to even explain.
I've never thought about it, but it's kind of like a shotgun, how you can shim a shotgun, I guess, to adjust the stock. And even on a shotgun, maybe the comb, right? The left and right.
Well, you get the cant, yeah.
Yeah. So, which on a revolver, maybe not, but not that you would shim that, but I mean, to even just to change the angle by a couple millimeters.
Well, and if you can keep it to where you can keep the grip in line with your forearm and not have to cant your hand over, that's huge in your recoil control. But also, too, what a lot of people complained about, whether it's Super Blackhawks or Bisleys, especially in the big kicking guns, is that rear trigger guard busting your middle knuckle when you shoot. Because if it's coming back, it can hit you pretty hard. Mm-hmm. So he has a lot of grip frames that add a couple of degrees of clearance back there to cure that. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, if you're going from shooting 3 or 4 times and having to put it down because you're just tired of getting your knuckle beat up, to being able to shoot it at will with none of that problem, that is worth the price of admission right there. It's making a lot of people be able to get into guns and shoot guns that normally maybe they just couldn't handle anymore. So great upgrade.
That aluminum frame, that's obviously pretty light, I assume. Mm-hmm. What's kind of your top end caliber you're gonna go with an aluminum frame like that? I mean,
the grip frame itself will handle whatever you want to put in it, because the way he cuts these things.
I'm thinking more from
a weight perspective,
from a comfort level. Because
me personally,
yeah.
I would probably tap out with aluminum at heavy 45 Colt 44 Magnum level.
Okay.
I don't think I'd want to go up to the 480 stuff. To me personally,
right.
I mean, I know guys that do it.
Sure. We've done it.
Kelly Bros would probably laugh at us for saying such a thing.
He'd be the man.
Right.
So we recently finished a run of 45 Vaquero featherweights, where we went, and Ronnie wrote a program for that. We went and we put the scallop loading gate, recoil shield. We lightened them deliberately. Mm-hmm. We cut the barrels down, put a dovetail front sight, and we put a new grip frame on it that he and I had kind of talked about. Because he came up to me one time and said, "You have a grip frame design you want to do?" And I said, "Yeah, sort of, but you have a lot of grip frames.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I want to do is just find you another grip frame."
Mm-hmm.
But basically, he calls it the bow tie. And it's a grip frame that we put on that featherweight, and we're going to be using it exclusively on quite a few of our customs for the next little bit, just because it's absolutely a perfect design that fits so many customers. Yeah. It's got enough length. You can get your hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got enough width. The recoil's good. The taper's good. And it's one that's – I called it a modified Elmer Keith number 5 at one time.
Mm-hmm.
But – because that's where the design came from. I just modified it.
Mm-hmm.
We shot that gun at the Shooters Holiday in New Mexico, and that gun, I think, what did the final weight come out to on it? It was 35 ounces.
Yeah, I think so.
Like 35, which is for a single action 45 Colt's pretty light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we were I had some of my hand loads, which were 270 grain, or actually they were 285 grain Keith loads, running about 1,000 feet per second, which is that's kind of a great all around do anything really. Probably about where you want to max out those smaller frame Vaqueros anyways. Totally comfortable to shoot out of that gun. I mean, extremely comfortable. I was really surprised. I was a little. I was like, this is going to be a little snappy now. But again, that grip frame made all the difference. I think in a standard grip frame, aluminum grip frame, probably wouldn't have been that fun to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But that the shape and geometry really worked. And if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I want to check these out, call Ronnie. There's a lot of options. But you just kind of tell him, give him an idea of what you're trying to do and your hand size and everything. He knows. He can tell you where to at least narrow it down to 2 or 3 options. But worthwhile addition to your custom 6 gun by far.
He'll probably ask you, well, do you have a little kid hand or do you have a big man's hand?
Yeah.
Kind of a trick question there.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So we've covered the back half of the gun.
Yep.
We've covered, I think, everything to do with the grip frame and the grips themselves. What about moving forward a little bit?
I imagine the next thing to do is I like to jump right into the action.
Yep.
Because the action, makes it or breaks it for me. So you can take the best looking revolver in the world, and if you can't get a good shot off repetitively,
mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's going to step up there. You got that guy that hits the target the first time and then hands it back to you because he doesn't want to shoot again,
Yeah, right.
But where you separate it is where you stand on the line and you put 6 in there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing it at a yardage that's reasonable.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you go in, and when we do our full action jobs, we do the hammer trigger pull. We set the trigger pull at 2.5 pounds. But also in with that, we're doing the timing on the revolver to where when the cylinder rotates around and it locks into place, there's no movement. It's not fast. It's not slow. Typically, your revolvers will be a little bit slow, which is not dangerous. It just changes the action a little bit and changes the placement and where it locks up.
So you synchronize it, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a watch almost.
That's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a watch mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And if everything works perfectly off of the perfect surfaces and there's no mistakes,
there should be no real feel or hesitation or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And say you've got a trigger breaking at 6 pounds. The difference in 6 pounds and 2.5 pounds
Huge.
creates very little movement in the revolver. So if you move it back here where your hand is ever so slightly at the muzzle, it's so much more that that's you'll have people talk about missing the target. They're like, my gun's not accurate. Well, sometimes it's that, but what's causing it is sometimes a bad trigger pull.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about, remember, you've got 6 unique chambers on a single action revolver.
Mm-hmm.
So if 2 or 3 of them align and then 2 or 3 don't,
Mm-hmm.
your 6-shot group is going to be kind of wonky. It's just, because it's
Yeah.
just the way it is. So not like a single shot rifle or anything else where you've got 1 chamber dimension to worry about. So
Yeah.
you've got 6 with a revolver, or 5, depending on the gun. And so having that gun timed up perfectly will really make a big difference, because you want that bullet hitting that forcing cone straight on. You don't want anything to be slightly off there where it's skidding on one side, and then when it hits the rifling, things are out of balance all of a sudden. And then now that's how you get gas cutting, and you get more leading in your barrel. All that stuff works together. Single actions, the guys, especially ones who are shooting them at levels that are really impressive, it's a whole system, and it all kind of works together. And if one of these things is out of whack, it can compound the effect down as the bullet is leaving the barrel. So having that gun timed properly and having a good consistent trigger pull is very important.
Will that be obviously like the grips, as we talked about? That's cosmetic and a little bit of function, depending. Would this be, if you really wanted, you bought your favorite single action, a nice firearm, and you really wanted to, start step 1 to really tune it up, or to, would that be the?
I like to start with the action.
So that'd be kind of the first thing someone could do. Someone's maybe on a bit of a budget, so I can't do it all at once, but let's do this first.
I tell guys that all the time. If you can only do one thing to it, do what matters the most in what you're doing and the action, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you can take, the next thing we'll lead into is our accuracy package, and it tightens things. Tolerances. It tightens your tolerances. It gets things to where they're just balanced more. But it's not like the action,
Right.
Yeah.
But together they make a great pair. But the action, in my opinion, would be the most important.
I agree with that. And look, and keep in mind, don't think that you have to do all this stuff to have a gun that's going to hit a target.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you can take a box stock gun, and a lot of people do every day, and they do just fine with it. But this is for the guys who want to tweak the guns a little bit and who want to milk every little bit of accuracy out of it. No different than a hunting rifle. You can take a Ruger 77 out of the box or whatever, take your pick and go shoot it, and you're going to go kill deer with it.
Yeah.
But, if you're out there and you're wanting to go from an inch gun to a 3/4 inch gun, there's certain things you're going to have to do to get it to happen. But I think Bobby's right on the action part of it. I think that's probably the one thing that I would look at first if I was going to prioritize my custom jobs on it. So what about accuracy?
So accuracy, what a great topic.
There we go.
So
segue.
So I'll have people call and say, well, I guess I have to have the accuracy package because I want it to be accurate. And I'll say, well, we call it an accuracy package because it helps the accuracy. But
When you say accuracy package, now I want to send every gun that I have to you, because it just seems like
yeah,
Rob, it's probably not going to help you.
because I'm
just
not
telling
that
you
accurate.
There's other reasons why it's not the gun's fault.
I want to hear about the guarantee of the accuracy package, but no, I'm kidding. Anyways, go ahead.
So we get a revolver in. The first thing I do is, and people send them in for an accuracy package, and I've literally called them back and said, your gun don't need an accuracy package. Let's not spend that money.
Yeah.
Because let's do grips instead.
Yeah,
because
right.
you weren't going to do grips because we were doing accuracy. So the forcing cone, we go in there, and the first thing we do is we measure the gap between the cylinder face and the forcing cone. It's the cylinder gap. And we measure that and see if it's 4 thousandths or 12 thousandths, and the process of setting that back is fairly extensive as far as it's not something you're just going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we literally have to pull the barrel, turn the shoulder back on the lathe, set it back, get the forcing cone, set the forcing cone back to where that gap between the barrel and the cylinder gets to 3 thousandths or wherever we're setting it.
Mm-hmm.
And then while we have the barrel off, we go in, we put an 11-degree recess in the forcing cone. And so that what that does is when that cartridge or that bullet goes into the forcing cone, you have more leeway for it to go in, and it's not going in hitting these rough edges.
It's not abrupt.
Right.
No, it's going in smooth. It's like doing a forcing cones on a shotgun.
So you're closing the gap on that cylinder right there.
Yes.
Right there, you buy 2 sheets of paper.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Makes a
whatever.
huge difference.
Yeah.
Where it really helps too is in your velocity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the bigger the gap is, the more the gases have room to escape
Mm-hmm.
out of that gap versus putting pressure behind that projectile.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tighter you can make that gap, you'll see, I've seen guns where you've closed the gap a couple thousandths and increased the velocity by 60, 70 feet per second.
Wow.
Yeah. And at this point, we're talking about guys who chronograph their rounds,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times, like where we shoot the test targets on these is at 25 yards. So a lot of people say, yeah, I'll shoot out 25, 50 yards. If you really stood out on a line and shot it 25 yards at a single target, it's humbling.
Consistently to do that
Oh, yeah.
is tough.
Yeah.
But there again, we're talking about the comfort level. So if I can get a 60 or 70 or 100 feet per second at velocity advantage by just shrinking my cylinder gap, now I don't have to shoot a heavier load, which reduces my recoil. So again, it makes my shooting experience better.
Yeah.
Puts less wear and tear on the gun, less wear and tear on me. So little things like that, 0.002 of an inch, you would think, but how much that can improve your shooting experience. It's free it's a free lunch.
So with less
that
gas escaping, though, would that not slightly increase your recoil?
No,
Not really. No.
no. It's just directing it in a different direction.
Okay.
Because that gas is going to take the path of least resistance.
Right. Right.
So as that bullet is passing through there, and that gas is behind it, the bigger the gap. It's like a gas tube on an AR-15.
Right. Okay.
The bigger the gas tube, the more the harder that bolt's coming back because you're throwing more gas backwards.
Right.
So it's a way to actually minimize the blast coming out of the sides of the gun too,
Right.
which sometimes you get some of that effect.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's a great deal to do.
Right. So moving on in with the accuracy package. So once we set the barrel back, guess what? Now your ejector rod housing is no longer the same size. So once you set that barrel back, because you got a hole for your ejector rod housing, everything's preset. So then we put the ejector rod housing in the lathe. We set it back, the last thing we do right before we take the barrel out of the lathe is we go ahead and do a barrel crown, and you'll see you can
See it
look
on this
at
gun,
but you'll see that it's got a
If you look at the crown on that gun.
And so one of the things that I want to say and I want you guys to think about what we've done in these last 2 steps with doing the action job and the accuracy package is we've allowed this revolver to work the way it should work. So it's not fighting itself. The parts aren't working against themselves with that timing, with the forcing cone, with all these things we're doing. Instead of having it to where the parts are fighting themselves by working, they're working in harmony with each other, and it makes the revolver last longer. All the parts last longer. They don't wear out as quickly.
Right.
Whereas you have one that the hand's coming up and it's dragging and the cylinder's locking and the bolt's clunking, and you have one that comes in like that, they're literally going to beat themselves to death.
Yeah.
So that's something that I point out that's very important, is not only are you making it to where it's going to look better, feel better. I'm sort of a snob these days
Sure.
with my action jobs. I don't want to shoot one that doesn't have an action job because
Right.
it makes me not perform as well.
So that's a tremendous amount of work that goes into
It is, yeah.
this process.
Yeah, there's
Tremendous amount of work.
quite a bit to it, and that's why on a lot of these revolvers we're doing as packages, it's such a value,
Well, you're fundamentally changing parts of the gun. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, it's not just running a polishing thing here or there. It's actually having to reset.
like I said earlier,
tolerance.
with a shim for a shotgun, you take the stock
Right.
off, put a shim on, put the stock back on. It's not that at all. You're having to reshape, the firearm,
Yeah.
the barrels,
One other thing that I always look at too on when I'm trying to set up a 6 gun is the throat diameters. Again, you got 6 different chambers, so really you need to make sure that your cylinder throats are all the same diameter. So
I've never even considered that before. I mean, I'm
Right.
not a single action junkie or revolver junkie like you are, but still, I just assume, of course, they're the same size.
Well,
right?
you got to remember, every manufacturer has
Yeah.
min-max type
Right,
specs.
yeah.
And so, Freedom Arms, they're going to all be perfect, but you're also going to spend close to $3,000 for one.
Right.
So to buy an $800 Ruger or Smith & Wesson, whatever else,
Yeah.
you got to give up a little bit somewhere.
Right.
And so while they are still very functional and will probably work just fine.
Right.
If you're trying to really squeeze that last little ounce of accuracy out of it, you got to make sure every time a bullet is passing through one of those chamber throats, it's the same diameter every time.
Right.
So, because what happens is, especially with cast lead bullets, which a lot of guys who are shooting these guns are shooting, if your throats are undersized, when that bullet goes through that throat, it's squeezing that bullet down. So now when it hits the rifling, it's undersized. Two things are happening. One, you're not engaging the rifling as good as you could possibly do, and secondly, you're allowing room for gases to blow past that bullet.
Right.
And when that happens, that flame cuts the lead
Lose velocity.
and it also deposits lead into your barrel, and it'll lead your barrel out. So what you want to do is you want to have your throats to be about 1 thou bigger than your bullet, and then you want your bullet to be 1 thou bigger than your bore diameter. So it's like a cone working its way down. It's like a 45 Colt, for instance. Most 45 Colt bullets are .452 in diameter. So usually a lot of guys will set up their throats at .453, and then their bore diameter is .451. So now you've got that bullet's just snugging through that throat, and it's hitting that bore slightly oversized. Now you're sealing that bore up. The gases can't go around it. It's pushing behind it, and you're getting its best effort at that point.
Right.
And so, again, you might have 4 of your 6 chambers that are perfectly 4.53, but you might have one that's 4.51.
Yeah.
So now you get keeping a flyer with this one bullet. He's just driving you crazy. Could be something simple as your throats. And guys like Bobby can go and hone those and polish those throats out and make them all consistent.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. I really had no idea. I've never really even seen that kind of work done before.
There's one other piece to the action that I would say is a pretty almost must for me, and that's the base pin.
Yep, I would agree.
You agree with that?
Yeah. So the belt mountain base pin, it's an oversized base pin, and what it does is it allows the cylinder to ride true. There's no slop, there's no movement, and you'll always see you'll be on the line if you're around a lot of revolver shooters or shoot revolvers much. You'll find somebody be on the line and their revolver won't cock. Well, guess what? That's backed out under recoil. And one of the things about these belt mountains, once you put them in there, you lock that screw in. They don't ever back out.
Right.
And it just makes a perfect zero pivot area on something that
There's less tilt in your cylinder.
And it's really a must on the big bore stuff.
A locking, like when we did the 480s and 454
The locking
Bisleys,
base pins,
Ruger
yeah.
put a factory locking base pin.
Right.
Because it's not, the heavy kickers will sometimes launch those suckers out of battery.
Sure, yeah.
And like Bobby says, it won't tie. I've seen guys fight, and want to throw their gun down the range because they couldn't cock it and everything, and they just had to push their base pin back in.
Yeah, it just works out. It works itself out. Yeah.
So that I think pretty much kind of ties up the action part of it. And then
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a revolver expert like you guys, but I'm interested. But it's fun to learn about. I mean, the intricacies of what 1/1000th of an inch will do.
It can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It can make because again, it's tolerance stack.
Yeah.
Because now if your throats are a little off and your bullet's a little off and your bore's a little off, it starts to stack up.
Sure. Yeah.
And it can be a problem.
Makes sense.
But sights.
Yep.
I would say sights are the next real big.
These grips are awesome, by the way.
Yeah,
these are.
That is probably my favorite single action I have.
Yeah.
That's actually that's a cool gun. That's the very first.
That is a cool gun.
That's the very first Bisley flat top 44 special Ruger made. They made that gun the year before we actually did it. They made that in 2009.
Really?
Yeah, the guy Mickey Wilson, who was the product manager at Ruger for handguns at the time, I saw him at a dealer promo in Colorado, and we had launched the regular flat top 44 special in 2009, and we were selling them there. And he asked me, "Man, did you get yours yet?" And I said, "Well, I'm waiting. We got so many back orders. I kind of want to make sure we get there before I get one." And I said, "Plus, I kind of want to. I'm a Bisley guy, anyways." He goes, "Well, I'll build you a Bisley." I was like, "Really? Okay." And so he goes, "Which barrel length?" I said, "I don't know." He goes, "Well, I'll build you one each." So he sent me the 5.5,
Yeah.
and then he sent me the 4 5/8.
Yeah.
And so that was the very first Bisley that they ever made.
That's cool.
And so I had it at the Shooters Holiday one year, and Bobby was looking at it and goes, "Let me make this thing a little better."
I was going to say you did this. You did the case hardening and everything. Yeah, this is cool. Well, the grip's cool because it's like perfectly smooth. Like the top is smooth and the bottom's got some grip.
It's right where you need it.
It's kind of the best of both worlds. Yeah,
That's a very shootable gun. That gun will shoot 250 grain Keith bullets at 1,000 feet per second.
Yeah.
in a very tight group.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
And it's good looking. You dialed it up. It's nice, really nice.
So let's talk about sights, Bobby.
Nope, that's a good place to finish out on the actual
function.
You know.
Yeah.
And so some people say, well, mine has sights on it. I don't need sights.
Right.
Well, so here's the deal. They make a general sight that fits everything. But if you're going to go to the effort to tweak the action, you're tweaking your load, you're tweaking your accuracy, you're modifying your grips. You don't want to get to this point and then sell yourself short. And so what you'll find is front sight height. We'll talk about that. I want to talk about front sight width, the thickness of the front sight,
and the shape.
The shape. We've also got the rear sight, and one of the things on the rear sights is when under recoil, sometimes the rear sight will go out of position with a spring, just like it's supposed to, and pop back up. But if that doesn't pop back up to the exact same place, guess what?
You're off. Yeah,
you're off. I mean, the next. That's your reset at that point. And so there's a lot of things going on here. This particular front sight is one that Furman Garza built.
Built this one too.
I think he did yours too. See, there's two different styles. So that's a Freedom Arms base, and this is a Ruger factory base. So literally, what we do is we call him. We order what size height we need. We always get them too tall. That way we can bring them down and sight them in. And what we call regulate them. And so the thickness and the shape, where that goes into effect is in your eyes, how your eyes focus, how much light is gathered around the gap between the front and the rear. And the shape of the actual blade, the sharpness of which you see it is affected greatly by the shape. You know, you get a little triangle point straight up, you just have less focal point.
Get a lot of glare.
Yeah.
That's really, to me, the real weakness of the factory front sight is that they're generally a ramp style, and they catch a lot of glare that way. And as my eyes have aged, that glare has gotten worse.
Yeah.
And what happens is you'll get a lot of vertical stringing, because as that you're out in the sun and that sight is, you're catching that glare off of there, you're seeing the top of that front sight kind of in different places. And so you're holding the gun the same, but your visual impact of that front sight is changing. And so you'll notice your rounds will start going kind of stringing vertically, because you're not getting a consistent front sight look. When you go to a Patridge style like this gun is, or just a full straight up and down, I guess it's a Patridge. This is a modified Patridge.
It is, yeah. That's where the concept
came
from.
You cut all that glare out. And so, and what Furman does a good job too is he cuts really deep serrations in there, and that serrations help cut the glare out as well.
Right.
Makes a huge difference. I mean, for some guys who are maybe almost contemplating having to go to a red dot but really don't want to put it on their single action, contact Furman. Going to one of his front sights might get you a few more years out of it.
So you have a taller base on yours. Yours isn't quite as tall, but you've got a shorter sight. Yours is taller. Is there? So
this is my biggest complaint with Ruger, and I've been telling them this for years. On their blued guns, the factory front sight base has a front sight ramp that's just milled into it, so you can't replace it.
Right.
So if you want to change your front sight on a blued Ruger single action, you pretty much have to get rid of that base and have an aftermarket one put on. On their stainless guns, the base is actually pinned, so you can change the front sight. You can keep the factory base, and you knock the pin out, pull that sight out, and you can put whatever you want on there.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to change. I've been trying to get Ruger to put the pin bases.
Is that a factory base?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get Ruger to do a pinned base on the blue guns for years, but to no avail. So this one has one that Bobby's applied to this barrel. it's a Freedom Arms style base, so there's a set screw in the front, so I can change out the front sight blades really easily on it. So yeah, the front, some people like a gold bead. I've got a couple guns set up with gold beads.
I was going to say there's got to be, at some point you get into just personal preference
Absolutely.
as well. So you mentioned functionality like glare and things like that are kind of just good staples, I guess, to have, or good if you're making a checklist of things you definitely want the sight.
It depends on what you want the gun for.
Yeah.
So like this gun for me is more of a a mid-range hunting type gun, shooting targets and stuff. So a flat black thin serrated front blade really works good for that. For my little short barrel 480, that's my gun for close in hogs. If I was ever going to be in bear country or whatever,
Right.
So having that gold bead gives me. It's kind of like almost having a defensive sight on a semi-automatic pistol.
Yeah.
You want something that's got some visibility where it picks up fast.
Right.
And so I like a little bit coarser sight. It's this because I'm not shooting that gun at distance. That gun is probably a 30-yard, 40-yard gun and in for me. Again, some people might like a red ramp. Some people like a white stripe.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing is with custom, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you. But one thing I will say this. The width can be as important as anything because the wider that front sight is, the more it's going to cover up your target at distance.
Right.
So I tend to, the guns that I have, especially like my single 6s and single 7s that I might shoot at some distance at small targets, I like Furman to build me a really thin front sight, and that way I can see that front sight post is not necessarily covering up a bunch of the target at distance.
Right.
And so you might have to adjust the size of your notch in your rear to account for that. Another thing you got to take into consideration is your barrel length. The shorter your barrel, the bigger that front sight's going to look to you because there's not as much distance there. So you can get by with a thicker front sight if your barrel is, say, 7.5 inches long.
Right.
If you got a little 3 3/4 inch gun, you might want a fairly thin front sight because it's going to look thicker to you because it's closer to your eye.
Interesting.
The rear sight on that gun is actually one of Ronnie and Furman's latest little creations. Tell us about that one, Bobby.
So this is literally, and I'd heard about this concept back, a couple years ago. I think Furman had kind of drawn this up and just trying to figure out how to manufacture it. Well, Ronnie took it and said, not only can I manufacture it, I can tool up for it, I can build it. We can have different models. I can put a set screw on them. So literally, this is the factory rear sight. What this is a piece that is in that blade track right here on the back side and attached to it. And instead of having that little small face, you've got a big, wide, serrated face with a set screw. It's
Same?
locked down. Yeah, compare.
Yeah, let me
Compare
see.
these two.
Let's see.
And so RW grip frames, as we mentioned before, Ronnie Wells, he's actually building those. He's building them for the flat top, single 6,
Super Blackhawk,
Super Blackhawk,
GP 100, Super Red Hawks,
Security 6.
I think so.
Yeah, I think. And so not only can you improve the rear sight on your single action, you can do your double action. I mean, it just gives you a better picture, and it makes it. I know this is sounding repetitive, but it makes it where it's working easier.
Yeah. That is thick.
Yeah.
Having a flat serrated back, whether it's got a knot, whether it's a white outline or just a plain black notch, gives you it cuts glare.
Yeah.
Because now you're not having a smooth finish that's just collecting glare into sunlight.
Yeah, reflective.
And it gives you just a nice, clean, crisp background. Because really, you're looking through that sight. You should be focusing on it. So when you're looking through that crisp serrated front sight, everything is working. Again, that can be the difference between making hits at distance or not, and from having maybe to go to an optic or go to a scope or something like that. That a lot of guys don't want to put on a handy belt gun. Yeah. So great upgrade. Sights are very personal. It can be kind of like grips. Everybody's eyes and everybody's hands are different.
Right.
But just like the white ramp. I mean,
yeah.
I'm personally not a white ramp guy.
I like it.
But a lot of people, their eyes get over 60, and they start thinking, maybe I can see that better.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why he's making so many options.
Right. I will say this: if you're in the market to buy a single action, and you definitely think, man, sights are one thing that I want to change, I would probably kind of guide you towards going to the stainless guns because it's just a lot easier to change.
Yeah.
It just makes life easier. You're not having to change the front sight blade, front base, and then having to re-blue barrels and do all this kind of stuff. So the stainless guns make that a lot easier. So that's probably a good advantage.
Why do they do that only on the blued guns?
That's a good question, man.
Well, how did you said that the blued gun comes with basically
it's an integral front sight base.
Well, you've got to shave it off. I mean, how do you get rid of it?
But you can't make it grow.
No,
that's usually the problem. They're usually too short.
They're front sights.
So and I've seen my fair share of ones with glue or epoxy or JB Weld built up on top of it.
Really?
And so one of the things we didn't point out a while ago that Jason just mentioned, like this one that we put on his, it's the aftermarket base.
Yeah.
We have to resolder it. We have to pull the barrel, solder it on there, clean up the solder, repolish it, and re-blue the barrel. So there's a lot of work that goes into.
So you cut the stock Ruger base off.
Yes.
You lop it off, clean it up, and then you put the aftermarket base.
We don't shorten the barrel, but we heat it where they had originally soldered it on. Heat it ever so lightly on the top.
Yeah.
It'll let go.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
a lot of expense.
So much easier.
So much easier to say. Or it'd be easier if Ruger would just put the pin in the front side. Maybe one day we'll get them to do it.
And maybe a taller one.
Yeah, taller. Yeah. Well, it just gives you options because this is one thing about single action revolvers. Probably is more susceptible to sight height than any other platform in a handgun. Because if I grip a gun really hard, then the gun's not gonna rise as fast as if somebody who grips it a little bit lighter. So what happens, especially on these heavy kicking guns, I might grip the gun fairly hard, so I might not need as much sight height as a next guy who grips it fairly light because that gun's accelerating faster. That bullet's still in the barrel as that gun's coming up, so it's leaving at a higher trajectory. So you need a taller front sight to keep your sight impact down. So where I might not need a super tall sight, the next Bobby might need one that's 3 thousandths taller, or vice versa. And so the way the single action grip frame is designed to roll up fairly fast in your hand. So it's more susceptible to that vertical impact difference than, say, an auto pistol. You can take a Glock 19, and it's almost pretty much universal what sight height you need for everybody because there's no hardly any vertical rise on that gun.
Yeah.
Even if you grip it light or grip it hard. Single action revolvers are probably the most affected by that phenomenon. So being able to change the front sight height, while it sounds like a very mundane thing, is vital to being able to regulate with the bullet weight and velocity that you want to shoot. A lot of guys who are stuck with a whatever sight, they might have to go to a lighter weight bullet to lower their point of impact, or they might have to go to a heavier weight bullet to raise their point of impact. So now you're having to compromise what you really want to shoot out of the gun to accommodate the sights instead of the sights accommodating you.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
So that's basically everything it takes to functionally improve the guns.
Yeah.
Now there's a few things you can do cosmetically. And Bobby, this is where you really got your start.
This is kind of my wheelhouse. So I'll kind of give you the rundown. So you can do finish work, you can do engraving, or you can do finish and engraving. You can do a color case finish. We can do a
What's the difference
finish.
between finish work and engraving work?
Well, so you've got a finish shop where you're going through the actual finish shop, and if you got engraving work, you're literally working with the engravers doing your engraving work. So,
okay.
So on these two that we have here with us, one of them is a blue and color case gun.
Yep.
And if you'll notice, the color case finish, that's our traditional color case finish we
do
for the manufacturers and stuff. And
yeah.
It's just been something that's been incredible for us to get to offer on some of these models.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. And so the stainless one that we have here, it has the engraving package. So this is hand engraving. It's not over the top. It's just enough, but not too much.
Yeah.
And there's some people that would rather have the color case and blued model because they say, I don't really want any engraving. But I tell you what, there's a special place for engraved guns. Yep. I mean, it's just something that, and it doesn't have to be over the top, but my goodness, it's gorgeous.
Some of the finest engraved guns I've seen have been very subtle.
Yeah.
It's just the accents. It really set the gun off.
It's obviously it reminds me of a tattoo, and I think that, even on a person, like there's over the top, there's like, whoa, and there's just like, that's kind of cool.
Kind of works. Yeah.
Yeah. It really looks, that's the right look, the right fit. And I see that on this gun. This one's hand engraved, you said?
It is.
So speaking of tattoos, is that kind of how you do this? Is it stenciled on essentially?
It's actually the artist that does it. He'll actually take it, hand draw it all on, and sit down and cut it.
Wow.
Of course, I have the revolver disassembled. I have it prepped. I have the barrel off of it. I have the loading gate out. The frame is separate, and he'll take each individual piece, lock them into a vise, cut that pattern out.
Wow.
So I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Where is when we're done, you don't have to reblue it.
Yeah.
Save some expense.
On a stainless gun.
Yeah, right.
And so
right.
on the blued gun in the color case, you got to remove the barrel. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
Got to reblue the barrel. But here we are at personal preference. Because not anything that we're doing at this point is going to make it shoot any better. But having a little confidence in what you have, being proud of what you have, there's a lot into that.
Well, folks, I think you need a blued gun and a stainless gun, and you can send them both to Bobby, and he can hook them both up for you. I think we have two in front of us, and I kind of like both.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
I need a couple. I need a couple in my collection.
It's funny. Years ago, I was just not into the engraved stuff.
Yeah.
But now, getting a little older and a little, you get to a point to where you kind of have everything you want. They kind of do it for me now.
Well, we have tons that come through here on different levels, but some I see that I like, and some are like just too much. But it's the same with different color guns, and it's like some are just like, whoa, that's a little too out there for me, and some are I just like a little more basic. I think it just depends.
I will say this though, on a stainless gun or a nickel gun, engraving will kind of dull the finish up a little.
Yeah.
So it's not as shiny in the field.
Yeah.
So there could be a actual functional improvement. I've got a nickel 4 3/4 inch Colt single action army my dad gave me. And, and a nickel Colt out in the sun, it's like a fireball of glare and everything else.
Yeah.
But it's a full engraved gun, and it's not bad because the shadows and everything from the engraving actually kind of cut that out. So So there can be some functional use of engraved guns.
Well, do you know why they originally started engraving them? Have you ever heard kind of some background on why they started engraving the revolvers? So they did it it was a durability thing. So if you have this pattern cut onto it, it's not going to scratch. I mean, it's not like you're going to get, say this one here, you take the top of it and you run something right down it. And so where this came out, when we were out at Brownells with doing the Elmer Keith gun, of course, it's pretty heavy coverage.
Sure.
And they were saying, we were reading some information talking about stuff that Elmer was doing. Elmer Keith, he had his plan, and part of why he wanted that engraved so elaborately was to hide scratches.
So if you really covered this gun, I mean, you really cover it, then
you're not going to screw. I mean,
I guess that makes sense.
It really did. Yeah. And at the time, we had one out there that was, almost full coverage, which this is a lighter coverage package, which, and then you got personal preference, but something that kind of rang hard, it's only been about the last 15 years that I really got into engraved guns myself that much. And, originally I was like, they're just fine just the way they are, or this or that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, maybe someday I'll own an engraved gun.
Yeah.
And then it's
went up from there. No doubt. Well, the thing is, that's a beautiful thing about these single actions. You don't have to do all this at once. You can work you can get it together. Look, my 5.5 inch 44 special right there. That gun started put a belt mounting base pin in first, and then just kind of did this and did that, and then finally got it to where I was really happy with it. And I said, all right, now it's time to put good grips, have it case colored. Let's put the custom front sight on there and everything else. So
a good path to take would be buy the gun that you really want.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I mean, I'm not saying you would buy something you don't want, but maybe wait, save, whatever you have to do, buy the gun you really, really want, and then walk through some of these steps in order to really get it dialed in.
I tell young gun buyers all the time, when it's all said and done, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would own a third of the guns that I have now.
Yeah.
Because I just would have went ahead and just waited and got the one that I really wanted, and then spent time tweaking that gun exactly the way I wanted it.
Yeah.
And have been happy with it.
Right.
I could live the rest of my days with that 44 special at my only single action and be pretty happy.
Yeah.
That gun will do anything I ever want to do with a single action revolver, and
Yeah.
do it with a nice look and feel too. But let's face it, we're all going to go buy a bunch of guns.
Yeah. That's
Hopefully,
true.
keeps us in business.
Right.
Very true. Well, Bobby, thank you. That was quite an educational session for me. So I really enjoyed that. I like talking about this stuff and learning about it for sure. Where can people find you? I know Tyler at Tyler Gunworks on Facebook, and are you on Instagram as well?
We do have an Instagram.
Yep.
We have a Facebook, and our website is tylergunworks.com.
That's where you can go see a lot of the stuff that we're talking
Yep.
about, up close, which is amazing. So,
And occasionally we'll grab like the featherweight. We'll grab some base models from you guys. We'll go ahead and do all this to them.
Yeah.
Throw them in our store along with a lot of other stuff, and so you can go on and check that out and browse through, and you might just find one that say, you know what, that one's already done.
Yeah.
I'll take it. And
while we're wrapping up, I guess, or just one more question, do you do a lot of work to not revolvers, semi-autos, anything like that, custom work or customization, anything along that line, or is this really kind of, I know this is your primary, your lane, I guess.
yeah. So our main thing we do is the color case finish, and then the revolver work's pretty prevalent at our place. But we over the years we've done a whole lot of different custom work. Right now we're doing a whole lot of work like with you guys. We're doing work on our own base models, and so we're backing off some of the actual custom stuff that we're just sending in one gun at a time.
Right. Yeah.
And because it makes more sense for them to come to Lipsey's and buy.
Yeah.
Where you guys can sell 100 of them in a short period of time. Or we can build 60 of them all the same.
Right.
And so we're doing less custom work for the public right now.
Yeah.
And it's not by choice. It's just where the market has pushed us.
And you got to pay the bills one gun at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, and with the amount of time each one of these takes, especially some of the topics that we hit on today. Yeah, that's
and a good thing is these packages that Bobby's doing and the guns that we're working on now and working on for some future stuff is going to have all these fixes already in them.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't have to necessarily go purchase the gun, then send it in, and then wait, and then have this, and it's done. It's done. It's out of the box. It's ready to go. Over a course of time between Bobby and myself and others, you kind of get 80% of what people are going to want,
right?
Because you get the constant request. I mean, after he does the same package 100 times over and over, it's like, okay, we can just make this gun now,
right?
So,
yeah.
So it's there's a lot of things that interesting things, and now the production for base guns are starting to improve again after the COVID craze. I think we can see some really cool stuff coming.
Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention a couple of exclusives as well, and we actually have a new one really right now, don't we? One with Bobby.
Yeah.
Talk about that real quick. I meant to hit on this earlier, but
so the big thing we launched at SHOT Show this year was the Premier Grade Colt Python.
Colt, yeah.
We had the 3-inch Colt Python.
A lot of buzz on that. A lot of buzz.
Same grips, the American Stag.
Stag, scroll hand chased engraving.
Yep.
That gun was by far the number one most picked up gun at SHOT Show and ordered gun that we have, and to this day we're still working off a pretty healthy back order list.
Yeah.
So we're constantly getting those done, and again, people have to be patient because these are hand fitted grips,
right?
And they're custom made. They're fitted to the grip.
Not coming down the line like
no. Yeah. So this is all stuff that's it takes a little time, but you're able to do it at a price that's readily affordable, and it is going to be available.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing that. We just did kicked off some Walther PPKs today, the Premier Grades.
Really cool.
Same package, engraving, American Stag.
Yep.
Absolutely love this gun.
Yep.
It is so cool looking. I really, really like it.
I don't want to ask what the status is of those now. We may not have any
allocated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's again, get with your dealer and get one on order today.
Yeah.
You might not get it next week or the week after, but if every day you put off putting it on order with them, somebody else you got a bunch of other people are getting in line before you. So we're going to work our best to work off of those and get them filled the best we can. We also we've got some Colt 1911s that we're working on. Bobby's team did a fantastic job of designing artwork that flows around the roll marks of the Colts.
Yeah.
And everything. It's just super tasteful.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's super cool. Again, American elk,
Yeah,
hand-fitted stags on there. And, Bobby's been here the last day and a half, and we've definitely cooked up some pretty cool stuff.
Well, that's good. If you like what you've seen, especially with the Colt and now the new Walthers that are really new, just came out, we've got more cooking, which is great. So we'll there's more of that to come. I know we've done some cool things in the past, but I like that we're ramping things up more. So and I'm sure you do.
Yeah,
so
it's our pleasure to bring these products and to work with you guys. It couldn't be any better.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and Bobby's a good dude. We've really enjoyed having him here and talking with him and seeing him at SHOT Show, and So Tyler Gunworks. I'm trying to remember everything here. At Tyler Gunworks on Facebook and Instagram, and TylerGunworks.com. And then, of course, you can find us at Lipsey's Guns on Facebook and Instagram and all the socials. And we've got our new Lipsey's Guns website coming to you very, very soon. So new and improved, our 3.0 version. So look for that. Hoping to have that up by the end of August here. So that's great. Thanks again for your time, Bobby. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, good job, Jason.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
this is my.
You sounded like you knew what you were talking about.
I wrote some cliff notes before.
Yeah, don't look at his palms and his hands. Yeah.
All right, guys. Until next time, aim higher.